Set? Okay. Yo, thank you. Thank you for this introduction. And welcome to this talk about cargo quilting and memes. I will try to do some jokes, but now I've got pressure. So basically, let me introduce myself. So I'm Nicolas Fränkel. I work in Switzerland, and I'm a developer and a software architect. So the joke is the following, that before, if you said you were a developer, well, 10 years ago, you were not taken seriously because, well, hey, you were a developer. So you had to say you were a software architect. But today, if you say you're a software architect, then you're only dealing with diagrams, boxes, and arrows, and you say you have to be a developer to be taken seriously. So I'm both. I work as a consultant. I work as a consultant. Right now, my customer is Espresso, you know, George Clooney, gray hair, what else? And yeah, basically I do Java, Java EE, Spring, and stuff like that. I also do some training. I teach in universities. I do professional trainings. I have 2 blogs, and you're welcome to have a look at them. And you are even welcome to click on the ad so I can pay for the hosting. Yeah, you will have the slides. So I also an author. I've written 2 books. Both are on Vardin. I'm very proud to have been the first Vardin book author beneath the company doing the framework. Who knows about Vardin? Oh, that's quite a few. That's great. So yeah, I encourage you to have a look at it. And right now I'm writing a book about integration testing. So basically, I've been to some talks here, and yeah, it confirmed that people have a very blurry vision about unit testing, integration testing, what to do with it, just replace unit testing with integration and stuff like that. So that's something I do on my spare time. Also, I work for this nice company called Hybris, and since it's paying for my travel being here, so let's have a little mention. It's an e-commerce company that sells a software which is done with Java and Spring. So it's for a product, it's kind of interesting. You can build an e-commerce platform upon that. And of course, it rocks because, yeah, it's my employer. And the good thing is, once per year, you can go to this nice little party in Munich where they bring you so small lighters of beer. And yeah, it's very fun. And for girls, oh, what happened? Sorry. For girls, you have to wear this nice dress, traditional. And for men, you can wear also the traditional leather pants. Okay, enough about that. You are not here to hear me talk about that. So we are here to talk about cargo quilting and memes. So basically, just a little, very, very quick separation between the two is that cargo quilting is when you reproduce something, but we reproduce the outer form without understanding the context. And meme is an idea that is so widespread that it has become the virtual truth. So first, there is a little disclaimer. Of course, what I will talk about here is fictitious. It never happened in reality, because we cannot be so dumb and so stupid as to make those mistakes. So just imagine. And the second point I'd like to make is, please do not believe me. Because what I want to do here is raise your awareness. I do not want to spread more cargo quilting and poor memes. So please adopt and try and do stuff on your own and use your brain. So, cargo quilting. In fact, cargo culting is a very historical fact. It happened in real life. And the most important example was, imagine you're living in a paradise island. Yeah, some people do. The lucky one. And imagine the only thing you have to do daily is to go fishing. Because you have to eat. Otherwise, God provides. And that's good. And you're happy. But at some point in time comes birds of steel, there's birds of steel. And inside those birds of steel are people, but more importantly, there is food. And thing is, this food is not fished. Not used to this. And inside it, there are people, but there is also food. And the good thing about that is that the people don't go fishing. Basically, they are carefree. They do nothing, they just have food. And what they do is they build stuff to get more birds of steel, to get even more food. After what? No. Hey, what's the device? So basically, they don't need to go fishing. But at some other point in time, they go away. So basically, you are left with two options. What you can do is you can resume your life, go fishing each day. And that's very stupid. Because the smartest thing to do is to do like the people that came with the birds. And basically, you can build stuff to attract more food that will come just to you naturally. And that's what they did. The people, they built airports with wood and coconuts, and radio with wood and coconuts. And of course, that didn't quite work as intended. So this is a summary of real-life cargo culting, when the inhabitants of some primitive islands were not invaded, but were visited by the Japanese and the Americans during World War II. That really happened. The thing is, software developers also do cargo culting. So, let me talk about someone imaginary, someone who never really existed. So there was this young developer, and he was taught Java. And at the time, because it was long ago, it was Java 1.3. Yes, people, there were versions before 1.5. And as he's starting using Java 1.3, he was taught that at the time, declaring a local variable was very heavy on performance. And so when you are taught that, since you are young and still smart, because when you get old, of course, brain goes with your age. So when you're young, you understand that since declaring variable is heavy on performance, when you have a loop, you declare the variable outside the loop. Yeah, of course. So, as many young developers do, either they betray and they become project managers, or they become technical experts. And when you are a technical expert, you need to write guidelines and standards. So, when you write guidelines and standards, you tell other young developers what they should do. And what you should do is declare variable. Oh, come on, anyone follows here? Outside the loops, thank you. So, and as a technical expert, he was very happy. And everybody followed the rules, his rules. But at some point, there was this new guy who came, and he didn't accept the new rules. He said, no, come on. You are just telling people stupid stuff. So, no, it's not a good idea. Because I have been taught that you should declare variables in the smallest scope possible. Which means inside the loop, thank you. Of course. So basically, the expert said outside, and the new guy said inside. Okay. So the expert was smart, but not close-minded. So he wanted to prove the other guy that he was right. So he wrote some sample with variables declared outside, variables declared inside. And the result was non-conclusive. It was exactly the same performance. So basically, he was proven wrong. But at the time, the difference is that it used JDK 1.4. And JDK 1.4 was smart enough to compile into the same bytecode, whether you used the declaration outside or inside. So, yeah, of course, the expert was disappointed. And I realized a very oh, no, not me. The expert, not me. It was not me. Because, you know, yeah, I told you it was only imagination. It was only make-believe. It cannot happen in real life. And so, yeah, the expert realized an important fact. And everything you're taught, especially in the software engineering and software development industry, has a context. And outside of the context, what you know is really, really not important. So the good thing, it also happens for food, religion, sports, whatever. So context is everything. So when you think you know the truth, no, you know some fact in a context. The rest is just bullshit. So the thing is, right now, I never could really prove that it had ever been true, that declaring outside the loop was better. Because when I wanted to finally check, for this talk, you can only download JDK 1.3 for Solaris, which I don't have, and Windows, which I don't want to. So what the fuck? Sorry. So yeah, I don't know if it has been a dream, because the devices are really strange here. So they are conspiring to get my talk wrong. Okay, you still hear me? Great. So, because what I infer could also have been true is that it was true for Java 1.2, and people were cargo culting to Java 1.3. So, if you want to know, and you happen to have Windows, you know what to do. So, this was about my personal, the expert's personal experience. But I think that in this room, people are also cargo culting, because I don't want to be alone. And a big problem, I find, a big misdesign, is about the data transfer object. So, remember or not, if you are too young, but at a time, I said the platform was called G2AA, a long time ago. And on this platform, you had plenty of services, plenty of APIs. And one of them was the EGB entity. Who is doing GPA right now? Oh, not so many people. Who was doing EGB 2 dot something? Great. So old people also. So, and yeah, at the time, the EGB specifications had 3 different domains, and one of them was the entity. Yeah, it has been replaced by GPA, but yeah, at the time it was EGB. The thing about EGB entities compared to GPA entities is that they were heavyweights, meaning they were really bound to the EGB context. They had many references to stuff inside the container. So yeah, you couldn't pass them to the web layer. So Sun did something clever. They created a design pattern for that, which was called the data transfer object. And basically, what you did inside the EGB container is you read properties from the EGB entity, and you pass them to the DTO. And then you could return the DTO from the EGB container. But now, people, there is EGB 3, there is GPA. Basically, when you have a GPA entity, it's a lightweight object. It's not bound to any container. You can pass it around like you want. And still, in many projects, people are still using DTOs. So don't be afraid, we're still using DTOs. Oh, come on. Okay. And yeah, that's a real proof of cargo quilting, because you don't need that. You don't need that. There are alternatives. The first alternative is when you have no association, where your entity is completely free from other association, is to pass the entity itself. Why should you create a DTO to pass the entity? No, you just passed the entity directly to the web layer. The second alternative, which I'm not saying is a good one, I'm just saying it's an alternative, because, yeah, might be good, might be bad, but yeah, you could use eager associations, which basically means when you get the object, you got the whole association with it. And it works. Also, I've seen that. No, sorry, I've heard about that. I also don't like this solution, but you could use the open session in view filter. Who knows about the open session in view filter? Okay. So please stop using it. No, my point is the open session in view filter. Yeah, like its name implies, it's a filter on the view. So basically, you start writing your page, and then at some point you've got an exception, and it just breaks, and you cannot do anything about it because you already started committing the response. So it's for me, it's an anti-pattern, but it's an alternative. What I've seen is to call getters explicitly to force the loading of associated entities, because in this case, what you do, what GPA or Hibernate or Eclipse, does, is to put a proxy, and only when you do the real call do you get the real data. Now, I will swear, and the next time I will swear loudly and in Russian. Hey, I can do that. So you can call getters, but for me, the best solution so far, which is my default solution when I have no other constraints or in a standard context, is to use join fetch. Join fetch in Hibernate, I don't know, I don't use GPA so much, so I don't know how it works, but by using join fetch, basically you're forcing at query time to get the data. So basically you have only one SQL request. And yeah, the bad thing in this case, it so slightly couples your SQL query to the view, because you are doing one SQL query for a view that needs this and this data. But for me, it's an acceptable trade-off. So, but it's not the only example, because you also have these data access objects. Likewise, G2E had this nice design pattern called the data access object. And basically, at the time, it was a design pattern because there were many competing technologies. So first, you had our beloved JDBC. And then you had this technology called Java Data Objects. Who've heard about Java Data Objects? Who actually used Java Data Objects? Oh, quite a few. Sorry for you. And of course, you also had this EGB entity stuff. And the good thing at the time is that you could change your mind. You could be agile. For example, you could say, I will create a data access object using JDBC, and it would completely hide the implementation. And I could change from JDBC to GDO and back again if it struck my fancy. Now I'm saying GDO, yeah, sorry for you, because I've worked on a project with a GDO implementation, and the people there, the developers from my team, were directly calling the GDO implementers because the implementation was really fucked up. And yeah, it was a good idea, but like any idea, it's always a good idea. It's only the implementation that sucks. And that's what we did. We tried GDO, but it sucked so much, then we switched to JDBC. And the good thing is that color code wasn't impacted. So it was really a good thing to do. So at the time, the data access object pattern had its uses. But then, nowadays, everybody uses GPA. Okay? And GPA is an abstraction. GPA already insulates you from the implementation, because you can use GPA on Hibernate, or you can use GPA on Eclipse Link, or you can use GPA on I don't know why, or on Pen GPA. So you don't give a damn about which implementation. So you already have your abstraction. Or if you use a concrete implementation, for example, I don't like GPA because for me, it lacks the query by example. And for most of cases, you have to write so much boilerplate code for just a simple query by example that I prefer to use Hibernate directly. So yeah, okay, that's my stance. And if I want to use Hibernate, I want to use Hibernate. But some people think they will still, so either they still use DAO because they are used to use DAO, which is very basic cargo quilting, or they think they might sometimes need to change the data store implementation. But people, that's not true. You cannot change your data store implementation for example, standard SQL to NoSQL. It's not possible because you would have to completely change the way your DAO is written, because those are two different paradigms. So the alternative is the following. You already have a DAO. It's called the entity manager. So if you are using GPA, you are already using a DAO. So don't create a DAO wrapping the DAO. Oh, perhaps you like creating code because you are paid by the number of lines of code you create. No? Nobody is paid by the lines of code? Eh, too bad. Or if you're using Spring Data, who is using Spring Data? Oh, very good. Spring Data already has an abstraction, which is called a repository, which is something like to DAO, and you don't have to create a DAO wrapping a repository. So only in very, very specific cases, you might want to create a DAO, a really useful DAO. For example, you are using a NoSQL store of a certain type, for example, a documents-based NoSQL store, and you might want to migrate to another during the course of a project. And this is the only real use case of the DAO today. But like migrating from SQL to NoSQL, don't think that you will be migrating from MongoDB to Neo4j and wrap it under a DAO. It will be a completely different paradigm, so it will be a different set of API. So the third and last example is about XML, because everyone knows XML is bad. Who thinks XML is bad? Okay. Who thinks XML rocks? Okay. Great, you have courage, guys. So, but 10 years ago, yeah, the only thing you had was XML. No! The only thing you had was XML. And yeah, it was good because you could validate it against a schema. But then came Java 5 with annotations, and yeah, of course, it replaced XML because XML is so verbose, you know, you have to write shitloads of pages of XML file just to do a single thing. And Maven haters know that. They don't love Maven because it uses XML. And also, XML cannot be compiled. So basically, you have to run your container to understand that you forgot to type a tag, which of course is not acceptable. And so the good people that hate XML used annotation to replace it. And in Spring, for example, they used those self-annotating classes, which of course is the best thing you can do. It's irony. Did you notice it's irony? Okay. So basically, you have the art services annotation, you have the art scope annotation. Oh, inside you've got a little string. Oh, might not be compiled so good. But, and the auto-wiring stuff. So, yeah, there are some good things about that. The first thing is that, of course, in this case, everything is in the same place. I've heard a developer, a colleague, a Russian, I'm sorry, it's true, who told me, hey, but then I can keep my flow when I'm developing. So basically, it seems to be very important for him not to have an XML file and a Java file, but just put everything into the same place so he can keep his flow. And the good thing is it's compiled. Yeah, only for the little string when you can forget a character. Too bad. But there are also a couple of disadvantages of using this approach. The first is, yeah, it couples your code to Spring. Isn't that interesting that we are using dependency injection and Spring to decouple our code so we can unit test? And then we are binding our code to Spring. Because the @service annotation, what does it come from? The Spring framework. So you're binding your code to Spring. So you could say, hey, you're a software architect, I'm a developer. This is just bullshit. I don't care. I want to couple my code to whatever works. Okay, that's a valid point. But then it also prevents reusing your bean. Because when you are saying that your scope is prototype and it's on the same class, basically, your scope of this class will always be prototype, whether you want it or not. So you cannot reuse your class, which is, hey, we are doing object-oriented programming, it's for a reason. They told me it was to be able to reuse, but we cannot reuse. So, not so good. And there is no valid point against that. The final stuff is it allows for bad design. Because in the previous slide, the auto-wiring was done on the attributes. And you know why? Because at some point, people will create classes that require hundreds of dependencies. And if you attended the talk by my friend Patroklos Papatriou, you know that Sonar will say it's a bad thing. And Sonar will say, no, you have too many dependencies for this class. But by using attributes, you are not putting these things into the constructor. So Sonar will not complain. So it's a trick. You are tricking the quality tool. And I'm not talking about testing, because if you are using attributes, of course, you cannot easily inject during testing. So you have to use dedicated tool like Mockito that does it. But it's a trick. If I don't want to use Mockito, why? No. So, sorry, that's really, really bad design. And so there are alternatives. The first alternative is to go back to XML. And then XML will say, bah, XML is so bad. You're so 80. But something which is there since a long time, and that maybe people don't know about, it's Java config. Hey, come on, guys, Java config. Java config is compiled. Who knows about Java config? Great. Who still uses self-annotating classes? You know what to do. Okay. Java config is compiled, and you've got no disadvantage of those self-annotated classes. Because, yeah, it couples your code to Spring, but first you told me you didn't care about it. It was just software architecture and you were a developer. Okay, great, but I'm a software architect, and I can live with having one single class of my application coupled to Spring. And I can remove it and replace it with Google Juice, for example. Also, the nice stuff to have is to have those scope. And did you notice that I use constants? So please, if you're telling me that XML sucks and that annotation are so much better, please never use strings inside annotation, because yeah, then your point cannot be valid. So the scope is put on a method which had nothing to do with the class itself. So basically, you're decoupling the class from the bean, and you can reuse the class in different contexts. Presto, you've got everything that's taken care of for you. So, with that, I wanted to address two more points about cargo quilting, which are not cargo quilting. The first is something that I called copy-paste driven programming. And, 15 minutes, I will have to go faster. So basically, I've seen that. That's not cargo quilting because you are not reproducing even the outer form. You're just photocopying code. So it's really, really, really bad. Another point, which is also interesting, is opposite cargo quilting. So basically, you change context, so you do not reproduce, but some stuff is worth reproducing. For example, who is using JavaScript in its application? Okay, who is using tests for JavaScript? Who is using great. Yeah. You can be proud. Who is using continuous integration for its test of JavaScript? Oh, the same. That's very good. So you're the good ones. Because right now what happens is that we are using JavaScript more and more, so we have less and less Java code. But with Java, we have all those nice tools and techniques and methods. And then we go through JavaScript and we say, well, I don't care. No, come on, guys. If you do JavaScript, you also have to use the same techniques and tools. So, by sporting cargo quilting, yeah, you should question yourself. Do you do cargo quilting? And you can question your colleague. And if the answer is, oh, but it always worked like that, or it works, or we have always been doing like this, then it's probably cargo quilting. And you should probably question yourself. So you could not cargo quilt. And in order not to cargo quilt, you have to question the reasons behind your and your colleague decisions. Like I mentioned in my first example, yeah, you cannot always be up to date. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a dream. You are good. You're probably even the best Ukraine and Russia has to offer, but still, you cannot always be up to date. And in this case, you have to listen to the other people, because people know not better, but they come from different contexts. Perhaps they are younger. Perhaps they had another customer that did interesting stuff. So just listen to other, and perhaps it will, yeah, create a spark of inspiration. And I know it's hard. I know it's time-consuming, but basically there is no other solution. So memes. Memes are a very different beast, because if you're talking to a cargo cultist, and if he's willing to listen, you can probably explain to him rationally what he did wrong, and he will change his mind, and he won't be a cargo cultist anymore. But memes are way more pervasive, because they are based on faith. And yeah, it's very hard to make a faithful renounce his faith. You can only do that if he wasn't a true faithful in the first place. My inspiration came from this book, written by Laurent Bossavit, which is called The Repression of Software Engineering. And basically, there is a meme in software engineering, which is called the 10 times productivity rule. And this rule says the following. Who knows about this rule? Okay, oh, not so many people, so it's not a good meme. But where I come from, everybody knows that a good programmer can be 10 times as most productive as a bad one. And it's a meme, because it's so widespread, everybody believes that. And so where does this meme come from? So the first study about productivity that Laurent Bossavit mentions is a study in the 70s. And basically, they took some developers from different backgrounds and told them to debug something. The thing is, the best one, the best one had access to an algol programming language in a time-shared environment. And the worst one had to program something in machine language, which is, as many of you know, extremely simple and easy to achieve. And so they found out that the ratio was 28-1. And after that, there has been many, many studies, and I don't want to detail all of them. I just want to point out that some of the studies, there is no direct observation. In some of the studies, the sample size is quite low. And the population is different. And what do you measure? Are you measuring lines of code. How do you measure productivity? Are you measuring debugging? What you deliver in a project? Yeah. So, if you're measuring lines of code, I will I'll use the microphone. Sorry about that. So, if you use any metrics, yeah, any metric you can think of is trivial to cheat. You're using lines of code, then I will create intermediary variables. I will use Java. I will have empty line breaks. I don't know. I can do anything. That's a real problem. Because, yeah, for example, I worked as a software architect for a project which has to be outsourced. And, yeah, metrics on code coverage can be gamed like any other. It's really, really hard. So, also, what do you compare? What are you comparing? Debugging, developing? And, yeah. So, my experience is that, of course, there is a difference in productivity between developers. But I'm not able to quantify. I'm only able to say this one in this specific area is more productive. But remember one important stuff, guys and girls, sorry, is that software, it's a team effort. So what's more important is having a very good guy working all alone because nobody can work with him because he's, yeah, too proud, or having a well-built team. Yeah, I know the answer for myself. I let you answer yours. But rejoice, because it's not only about software development, project management also has meme, and graphical design also. So, who knows about this cone of uncertainty in project management? So basically, it tells you that at the beginning of the project, you have much certainty, and you have as much certainty of working overtime than working less. And of course, after the project goes on, you have less uncertainty, and it decreases nicely. So yeah, there is a source. And of course, it makes sense that uncertainty decreases with time passing because you deliver features. But does it make so much sense that it is symmetric? Meaning you can gain as much time as lose as much time? It never happened to me that I gain so much time in a project. And does it make sense that the curve follow a very good mathematical function? Not so much. So my experience in this case is this cone. So basically, yeah, you might deliver a feature, oh, but it's buggy as hell, and then you have to do it again. Oh, I'm sensing a certain kind of kinship. Happen to you also? Yeah, and of course, as I said, yeah, you cannot gain much time. So yeah, it's much higher. Interesting example is that when I was younger, I was told that images are read left to right. Of course, in other cultures, images are read right to left, if you are Hebrew or Arabian. And came on the market a device to follow eyes movements. And on the TV, they use someone, put the device on his head, and made him watch this picture. So no, images are not read left to right. I will not comment about that. So related to memes are a logical fallacy, the no true Scotsman fallacy, and ideology. So the no true Scotsman fallacy is very simple. Angus, my good friend, is Scot, and he said, no Scotsman put sugar on his porridge. And one of his friends said, but I'm a Scotsman, and I put sugar on my porridge. Then the answer is very easy. No true Scotsman get sugar on his porridge. So 2 example is code is self-documenting. Hey, of course, everybody knows that. No, but my code, I cannot make it more explicit. I have to document it. No, then refactor it, it's bad code. Agile Delivers. But my last Agile project was a disaster, it was a failure. Yeah, you must have done Agile wrong. Hey, you cannot dispute it. So be wary of that. So the last point related to memes is ideology. And whereas memes are very widespread, ideologies are generally limited to a small subset of people, and sometimes you have counter-ideologies. So my experience is that I've been told that my code is crap because it's not proper, and then you fill the points. It's not proper object programming, hence your code is crap. It's not proper functional programming, so your code is crap. It's not proper I don't know why, so your code is crap. Very hard to dispute, and you get a guy from the OOP background and a guy from a FP background, put them in the same room, and you wait, and meanwhile you can code. And I don't give about the way I achieve code, because object-oriented programming, functional programming, those are only ways. My goal when I code, when I'm a software architect, when I'm a developer, what you want is to have code that is easy to test, that is testable, that is readable, and in the end that is maintainable. Because that's most of my context. So as soon as I get them, I don't care how I achieve that. The last point is how you spot memes. Yeah, it's a blank slide. I don't know. I really don't know. It's only because I read this book that I realized some things I thought were memes. So I guess you could read the book, or you have to find your own ways. So I thank you for your interest, and there are how many minutes left of questions? So 2 minutes for questions if you want. Great, thank you very much.